were some of the challenges that Darktrace faced in being not only a publicly traded company, but a publicly traded company in London?
Yeah, great question, Jordan. Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you today. So first of all, Darktrace is a brilliant company, an incredible product. It grew really quickly just on that foundation of a really strong product that served customers really well. We're AI native, and so we were AI before it was cool, if you will, to protect customers, their networks. Specifically in the beginning, we were network detect and respond, then email, and then cloud. And so when Thoma Bravo made the purchase, it was really on the foundation of that product strength. What challenges did we face before it? That's really in the other parts of the business, which is we'd grown so quickly that we didn't have foundational systems to support future scale. And the nice thing about Thoma Bravo is that they have the resources that help us create those foundational systems and scale, not just financial reporting, but also people that have experience with growing small companies into larger companies and creating that ability for companies to grow into the $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion range. The other thing that it gives us is access to capital. And so it allowed us really to look at creative acquisitions. And as you know, we acquired a UK company recently called Cato. It's a cloud forensics company. And that's absolutely where the majority of total addressable market is today, is in this cloud space.
Were there particular challenges being publicly traded here in London? We've talked before about access to capital and the ability to recruit people. Like the ability to recruit and offer stock options is just different here in the UK than it is in the US. Can you talk about some of those challenges the company faced?
It is different. There are limitations on how much equity you can provide an employee in a UK company when you're regulated here in the UK. Those limitations don't exist in the US, and so we have a lot more ability to share equity with our employees, which is nice.
Right. And another question on this topic is, so one of the aspects of private equity's ownership of cyber companies that we've done a lot of reporting on is the fact that the leverage buyout is still the preferred vehicle for private equity. Darktrace is no different. The purchase price was $5.3 billion. The debt reporting agencies noted after the deal that $2.1 billion of that deal was debt. That debt is rated highly speculative, right? I mean, that's what the rating agencies say. What do you think about that kind of brand, right? I mean, this is the PE. This is the way PE companies are evaluated by the markets. Do you agree with that kind of label, or?
Well, I think the rating agencies are rating the private equity companies in general across all of their investments, and so. Debt is an interesting conversation topic because for a CEO, I'm trying to run the business, right? And I know that Darktrace has a debt structure. I know that Thoma Bravo is very careful with how they do that. We actually have a very high amount of equity. The composition of debt to equity is actually debt very low in the Darktrace case, which I think is actually very positive. And day to day, I don't think about it. I don't think about it at all. I'm creating a profitable business with a team of incredibly brilliant people here in Cambridge, in the UK, right, in London as well, and we have a growing team around the world. We're all focused on growth and on creating a profitable business, driving EBITDA, and then we use that to pay the interest on the debt. So it's really not something that impacts the business on a day-to-day basis.
Have you had to make any changes to the business structure because of the debt? Have you had to cut back in any areas?
No. I mean, Darktrace was already an extremely efficiently run business. Because we are an AI native company, our cost for R&D, and again, all of that space in Cambridge, is exceptionally low comparatively.
Perfect. One more question here, and we'll get to Yevgeny. Have you talked with Thoma Bravo about a timeline for an exit? At this point, we're in year 2 of the acquisition. PE firms typically like to hold companies for 3 to 5 years. What is your expectation in terms of timeline?
There are a number of dynamics that go into any exit, right? And TB will keep an eye on that and watch it for us. Again, my focus is truly like growing the company, ensuring that we're taking care of our 10,000 customers, growing that $1 billion in revenue to an even bigger number. And as long as I do that well, I have confidence that together we'll make the right decision at the right time.
Terrific. And if you listed again, if you went public again, would you consider listing in London again, or would it be somewhere else?
I think there's all sorts of considerations. I mean, Orlando has been here in Europe quite a bit, and in London specifically, and he's talked about really appreciating the market that we are in today, and his involvement in it.
Sure. Terrific. Yevgeny, I want to get to you as well. I mean, this private equity idea is also relevant to Armis. Bloomberg reported earlier this year that Thoma Bravo, was in discussions with the company to, about a potential acquisition, valuing the company potentially at, as much as $5 billion. Are you able to confirm that those talks are ongoing? Are you able to confirm the talks and whether they're ongoing?
First, great to be here. Great to see everybody. Armis is growing really, really fast. We're growing consistently over 50%, across the 300 million ARR mark right now. A lot thanks to the great demand that we are witnessing right now because of attacks on critical infrastructure. Basically, like all the geopolitical tensions, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, everybody, you see a lot of targeting infrastructure, targeting national infrastructure, the most critical areas, from airports to grids to manufacturing in the US, in EMEA, we see a lot, UK as well, and that's why there is a lot of interest in the company. What I can share is that there are a lot of offers on the table at Armis. I think that recently when Bloomberg reported, there were like 10 different offers. Rounds of funding from 100 million to billions. And what we are focusing is to continue and grow fast. We set a goal of $1 billion in ARR in 3 years, that we are growing fast into that. What I can say that we are going to continue to be an independent company. I want to be in the Hall of Fame of cyber, grow to $1 billion in ARR, $2 billion and more. We have an opportunity. We are the leader in cyber exposure management and security space. Super unique opportunity, and couldn't be more excited about the future.
And are you still, you'd spoken before about plans for an IPO next year. Is that still your plan?
So we believe that end of 26 or early 27 can be a good time. It all depends on the market, of course, but our most important metric for me as a CEO is, again, the growth and the leadership across all our products, and to grow to $1 billion and more, of course, in ARR in the same ratios of winning, and also the percentage of growth. Super unique. No other public cyber company right now does it, and we have a unique opportunity to go out and be that leader from that perspective as well. But we will always align with the market conditions. We'll do what's best for the investors, and we're not in a rush. It will be one great milestone on the way to the billion and the $2 billion in ARR, and to building a generational business.
Something we've talked about before as well is the idea that most cybersecurity companies don't go public. Most cybersecurity companies are acquired. And the reason for that tends to be that cybersecurity products are very narrow. They perform one specific function very, very well. You talk about plans for an IPO potentially next year. Why do you think Armis will be different?
So from the very beginning, we were solving a really, really big problem. Basically, the explosion of connected devices, assets in a variety of different environments, the gaps around operational technology security, medical device security. Everybody knows, basically, those are things that we all see: manufacturing plants, retail stores, distribution centers. They're the core of the business of companies that, imagine in CPG, airlines, and basically the business depends on it. Being able to protect those is top priority for all organizations. We've seen that gap. We've expanded more also into the asset management space, what Gartner would call chasm. We expanded also into remediation and prioritization of issues, finding vulnerabilities in cloud, code, not just in the OT and IT world. We continue to do more and more, all per the feedback of our customer advisory board. I can share that myself personally, I'm spending time with at least 10 customers a day. Basically 5 prospects, 5 existing customers, and listening to them about what's next, what is the most important for them, for us to build. And this is how we are growing. So it always aligns with what customers really need, where real budgets are, and customer expects us to build that platform. And what we see in cyber, and you mentioned all the acquisitions, our customers, they want to rely on 10 to 15 main vendors, not on 70 or 80, or sometimes I heard one that 140 vendors, cyber vendors for one company. They want those 10 to 15 that can perform a lot of different things for them, protect the different areas, protect different types of environments, expand more. They want to trust those specific real platforms. And this is where we have grown to be, we have customers that are using 4 products from Armis and growing more. And new products that we are releasing in the next few quarters will be also the core of our cyber exposure management and security.
It really does appear that if you want to be a publicly traded cyber company, and you would know this, you have to be a lot of things to a lot of people. You can't just be one thing to a lot of people. You have got to be a lot of things, a lot of people. Just to give you a sense of what some of these technologies actually do, the core of Darktrace technology is machine learning. Machine learning applied to your network to figure out what is normal, and then ideally, what is abnormal. In the case of Armis, we're talking about a lot of things: vulnerability management, understanding what's on your network, understanding what should be there, what shouldn't be there, things like that. And these capabilities become increasingly important with the advent of generative AI. And in our earlier conversations, I've spent a lot of time as a cybersecurity reporter for Bloomberg trying to figure out how are hackers actually using generative AI. Not machine learning, not AI as we would typically think of it a few years ago, but generative AI. And Jill, you've got a great story about both the use of the technology, the use of generative AI by adversaries, and also the human role, human vulnerabilities that so often lead to attacks. We wrote a lot in the past few months about cyber attacks on M&S and Co-op and Jaguar Land Rover. These were devastating cyber attacks that were caused by human fallibility, call center operators letting somebody into a network when they shouldn't. Do you want to tell your story about the job applicant that Darktrace had that kind of embodies a lot of these threats and use of generative AI by hackers?
Sure, I'd love to. And we talk about deep fakes, and then we also talk about novel social engineering. And that's like a lot of big fancy words for new human manipulation, like finding new ways to manipulate humans around the world with AI, right? So in this case, Darktrace had an applicant for a role, an engineering role, and we were interviewing some remote candidates. We got a CV, a resume in. Resume looked pretty good. We said, okay, we're interested in this candidate. Can we also get some examples of your work? GitHub does a nice job of providing a profile and a portfolio of those engineering experiences, like some code that you've written. And so we got the GitHub profile. We're able to look through that, and that all looked right. And so this candidate made it into a Zoom interview. And the Zoom interview was done from one of our other lead engineers, really sharp people working at Darktrace, right? And he looked at the window in the back, and he thought, this candidate should be awake right now, and yet it's dark out their window.
The candidate was supposed to be in Ireland, right?
The candidate was supposed to be in Ireland. Quickly after, he said, wait, is it dark outside? The interview ended.
Okay.
And so then we started to look, and that candidate somehow disappeared.
And what your investigation later uncovered was that all of the background on this person, the LinkedIn, multiple GitHub repositories,
were AI generated.
Were AI generated, and part of the way how were you able to tell that? Was it the amount of time that it took to create these sites, like the succession in which they appeared? Is that how you were able to tell that generative AI was used for it?
Exactly. It was too short. It was too short from when we saw each of these things. The LinkedIn profile was relatively new. The GitHub profile had actually shown up to be relatively new.
So the bottom line of this is, you have really effective, convincing, persuasive background stories of people, right?
Very
Their
persuasive.
profiles, LinkedIn pages, GitHub repositories, showing how you write code, which was the type of job that they were applying for.
Well, and Jordan, this is why it's so important that everybody here hears the stories, because we all have to be aware, right? We can all be exploited in different ways if you're not kind of aware of what's going on.
We had a guest on a panel earlier from Palo Alto Networks who described an attack that they investigated recently where it was a North Korean IT worker who was, this is an increasingly common scam where you'll have IT workers gain access to a company through the recruitment process and through jobs. And the case that they investigated, this worker got a job, was employed, was doing the job, but was using a Gen AI deepfake visual every day on their video Zoom calls to trick their coworkers into believing that they are someone that they are not. And that is to gain access and get deeper in the network and escalate your privileges. Now, Yevgeny, how are you guys seeing? I love the story of the recruitment because that is such a human vulnerability that is very easy to exploit. What are you guys, one of the other things that we've learned is that generative AI, hackers are using it to shrink the amount of time between when a vulnerability is disclosed in critical software and when that software is exploited. Used to be, that gap would be 24 hours, 48 hours. Now, we understand it's as little as 4. So you've got a vulnerability that comes out at midnight. By 4 a.m., you've got active exploitation on your networks. Is this a trend that you're seeing as well?
So definitely, it's a great point, and we've been, in our labs team, have been working a lot specifically on how can we provide an early warning to our customers in terms of vulnerabilities that are actually exploited. Because you have so many vulnerabilities, and vulnerability management teams are small. So the ability to really prioritize and focus on what's really exploited is something that we really help our customers and focus with our labs team. Focus on how can we do it as fast as possible, and definitely when we are seeing with AI that time really shrinks and we need to move faster, this is something that we are working very hard. Amazing team of cybersecurity researchers and analysts that are doing a great job and being able to deliver faster for our customers.
So do your analysts and defenders, do you have to use generative AI to also shorten the time that you take to respond? Because it's not just the hackers that are using it, right?
Yeah, so on one hand, the hackers are using it, and we talked also in the past about the scale, right? Hackers are leveraging, like the simplest tools, they can leverage AI to get to a much bigger scale in general with the same tools even. On the other hand, as a defender, we know our environment. We know our environment better than anyone else. So if we do the right things, we can map it, we can understand, put the right traps, put the right compensating controls in the environment to make sure that to prevent a lot of these attacks even before they happen. Some of these exploits as well. If, let's say a camera that is being exploited and it doesn't have any access to the internet or any access to specific IP addresses in specific countries, already reduced the risk significantly from the very beginning. So a lot of these things we would do in the beginning, in the first several days that we work with the customer. So compensating controls in the era of AI are super important because we know the environment better than the attacker. And that's something that is very significant. We definitely invest a lot in their R&D product. I think that we have a lot of conversations about AI replacing humans. I think that there is no replacement for human talent, but what can happen is we can be much more efficient. Same, 200, 300 R&D and product developers can be way more efficient, and AI will really drive it. And we are seeing it already in terms of productivity.
And another thing I want to touch on quickly, we only have a couple more minutes left, is ways that, this is a question that I ask a lot of people that I interview. How are your organizations using generative AI, independent of fighting hackers and things like that? And Jill, you had a great example of product demos. I didn't know that product demos can be so long. Can you tell me how you're using generative AI to help you with your product demos?
Sure. So let's think about product demos not just as a sales tool, but also as a way to train our customers, right? So we're often videoing scenarios, how you'll use the tool. That could be an hour-long, hour-and-a-half-long demo to show every detail of the tool and how to use it, right? So whether it's sales or training, it's a lot of work to go in and recreate that demo when there's a product upgrade. So, okay, Darktrace has product upgrades all the time. And honestly, with the way that our innovation schedules are running right now, that's at least quarterly. Well, we don't want to re-record each of our product demos every time. Now we can use voice generators to type in that code and match the voice that is on the demo, so that if you just want to replace a small segment, maybe it's a 15-second segment of that hour-long demo, you can go do that relatively easily rather than setting up a production studio again, setting up the demo and completely re-recording.
Because the idea being, if you've got to re-record a 2-hour product demo, that's a lot of people's time. You have to book a studio, right? I mean, so it's a small use case. But I like that because that solves a problem, right?
It's a very focused use case, and it's a great productivity enhancer for our teams.
And as you mentioned, enterprise software makers now are releasing code every week. This isn't like every month or every quarter like it used to be. It's every week. Yevgeny, we've got 20 seconds left. Is there a use case as well for generative AI within Armis that you want to mention?
So one, this is a great use case on the product demo side. Definitely a great idea. I would share one of my favorite one is that right now when you go to the Armis console as a customer, you can just ask what are the top 3 things that I can do today that will reduce my risk the most, and get an answer from Armis 1, 2, 3, and go and continue and reduce risk. This is super significant. Customers love it, and it was great work by our teams leveraging AI.